Hello, this edition looks at the Pit Orchestra in Plymouth. My name's Lee Morgan and this is Portrait from the PRSD. The Pit Orchestra, formerly the Imperfect Orchestra, is set to provide a live accompaniment to Battleship Potemkin. It's a celebration of the film, but also marks something of an evolution for the Pit Orchestra itself. We spoke to Tom Richardson, the Pit Orchestra's musical director, about the development of the boundary-pushing musical movement.
A bit of history is we came out of a kind of movement, I guess you could call it, in Plymouth, run by a friend of ours, Alistair Gall, who was doing a master's in film. And he, as part of that master's, set up a group called Imperfect Cinema, which was like a kind of grassroots de-skilling cinema movement. So trying to just get anybody who wants to make a film interested in making films and not really trying to play into the high production values, you know, that kind of elitist, highly skilled kind of version of filmmaking, and just making films for the love of it. And as part of one of his projects, he invited me and my friend Chris Bailey, who was a kind of original founding member of the orchestra, to write a live score for a film that he was making, which was all about Plymouth. That film was called Home. And so we set about gathering a group of musician friends of ours, and we went under the name of the Imperfect Cinema Orchestra for that first performance. And then we fell in love with the whole idea of doing it. And so thought that as kind of an homage to Imperfect Cinema, we would call ourselves Imperfect Orchestra and try to take on some of the ethos around the idea of imperfection, and that you can be an amateur and do these things as well. You don't have to be a highly trained conservatoire musician to be a member of an orchestra. You can be somebody from a punk band who knows power chords. You can still be in an orchestra if you want to be. And so we did that for about 10 years. And then it got to our 10-year decade celebration. And we had moved quite a lot in the way that we approach things, partly because of the type of music that we wanted to make didn't always lend itself to the idea that you could... Imperfect Cinema was kind of experimental, grab a camera and see what happens kind of idea. And the music that we wanted to make doesn't really lend itself to grab an instrument and see what happens kind of ethos. So we felt it was time to just move away from the moniker of imperfect and what that kind of means in Plymouth. It's got a real name, and just separate ourselves as a different entity that has our own ethos and like draws from all those ideas that Imperfect Cinema gave us, but that we've now got our own identity. And so we thought that we are essentially a pit orchestra of some kind. So the Pit Orchestra. And it's also got kind of links to, you know, the Southwest mining history and all that kind of stuff. That's the idea of the change from imperfect to pit.
This isn't the first time the orchestra has dived into Battleship Potemkin. They accompanied the groundbreaking film in 2017. Tom explains how that experience is colouring this approach.
So it was our most ambitious project that we tackled at that time. We were given 7 months to write the score, and we spent 5 of those writing and 2 of them getting the crew together and rehearsing. And what we produced was really well received, and we were really happy with it, given the kind of constraints we'd given ourselves for time. We knew that there were improvements that we could make. We knew there were things that we didn't realise quite as well as we might have hoped. And so when the centenary year comes round, it seems a perfect opportunity to revisit that project and make it the thing that it could always have been. So we like to see 2017, maybe more personally, as like proof of concept performance. And this one hopefully is going to be what it should have been, what it could have been in its kind of most realised manifestation, I suppose. I don't think any of us were really that familiar with the film when we were approached in 2017. It's kind of one of those names that you know, but had any of us watched it, I'm not entirely sure. But through watching it, learning about the themes that are in it, and then doing quite a bit of research around what happened in that kind of revolutionary period in Russia, especially in the art scene, and how there was a huge movement away from the authority of Tsarist Russia that had just collapsed. And there was a period of really intense creativity in Russia where people were eschewing and getting rid of any ideas of traditional ways of making music. So you would have small chamber orchestras that were just deciding to get rid of a conductor. We don't need a leader. We'll work it out ourselves in the group. And so they didn't kind of want those types of authority bearing down on them or telling them what to do, but also that people were experimenting a lot with different ways of making sounds. So very much kind of inspired by the constructivists and the futurists, they were deciding that whilst the violin, for instance, is a traditional way of making those kinds of sounds, what would happen if I built a box with a speaker in it and a handle? Could I get the same kind of sound that a violin makes? And why not use that instead? There's a fantastic cartoon that was made around the time where it's a conductor in front of basically a load of kind of farm machinery. The poem that goes with it is kind of saying, we don't need a cello, we've got an excavator. We don't need a violin, we've got factory sirens. So they were sort of trying to bring music back away from these highly trained, highly skilled ways of getting into making those sounds and just trying to make them with things that were around, creating all sorts of crazy guitar instruments and these walls of glass bells. And it was a kind of really inspiring thing to see, that we wanted to try to draw on some of that energy. So that kind of revolutionary idea in the way that people were making music, along with the kind of revolutionary ideas of men on a ship mutinying and overthrowing their masters and taking fate in their own hands and all that kind of stuff, it seems to sing with everything that we are about.
For an orchestra that lent into its imperfection, getting to where they wanted and the sound they wanted has taken a special sort of skilling up.
Part of the Arts Council funding, one of the central tenets of getting that funding was that we wanted to upskill parts of the orchestra kind of machinery so that we can grow as an entity. And that seemed to make most sense, that I, as the musical director, would upskill myself in terms of writing traditional notation so that our scores can be disseminated to other groups. Other people might be able to play our scores, or just for legacy, just that they exist in the kind of written form that people use. We've tried over the years to sort of come up with our own written language for making or remembering what it is that we've written in the room when we come to perform. And all the time, potentially, we were sort of fighting against a generally accepted visual language for music, which is notation. You know, if you learn to play music, you're probably going to learn to read music at some point if you're, taught in certain ways. And so me learning how to do that was a big part of our progression, our upskilling, but also getting mentoring from my friend Simon Dobson, who's an incredible composer, generally for brass band, but does arranging for orchestra and is a conductor and stuff. So getting advice from him on orchestration tips and how to create the notation, how to use the software that you need to notate these things if you don't want to do it on quill and ink. And then I also got some mentoring from Charlotte Part, P-A-R-T-T, who is a London-based film composer, and got mentoring with her about how to write music for film. Obviously, we've been doing that for the last 10 years, but somebody that's in that industry and has other insights was a really interesting and useful mentoring to have. Yeah. And then the third mentor that we've had just most recently is Kat Marsh from a group called Choir Noir. She set up that group, and they are a kind of A-team available for hire choir, but also they work in a very similar way to us where she creates all the arrangements, but she very much creates them not from the written page, but just from experimenting with her voice and creating parts, and then working with a choir to kind of teach them the parts that she's made. And sometimes they'll go out and perform those. Sometimes they'll get hired in to perform for bands at the Royal Albert Hall and all these kinds of things. So we wanted to get her in to help us to gel our choir that we're working with in this project, because writing for choir is something that we did for the first time in 2017, and we didn't know what we were doing. So it was really good to get her in as well to kind of help us know how to work with a choir, how to do warm-ups, how to get the choir gelling as a unit. Because if you play an instrument, you can know how to make a C, but knowing how to make a C with your voice is a very different skill. So we knew that we needed some help with that. And yeah, luckily we got the funding to be able to hire all these people in.
And how can people get involved with the Pit Orchestra?
Generally, what we like to do is to make every call out completely open. So it's a bit of a tricky one this time round. I'll explain why in a minute. But the general premise is that we want to not end up with the Pit Orchestra being the same people all the time. I and Chris Bailey and Chris Muirhead, as the founders, we get to be in it all the time because it's our thing. And I kind of think that's fair. But we really want to keep evolving as a group and keep inviting new members in and keep giving people these opportunities, not in a kind of by the grace of us, you get to do these things, but just, you don't get that many opportunities in Plymouth to become part of an orchestra that's going to play to a film live. And so we would like to share that opportunity with as many people as we can. Every time we have a project, we have an open call. And we just say, if you're interested, it doesn't matter if you play an instrument. It doesn't matter if you've ever played an instrument. It doesn't matter if you are a seasoned professional with 50 years playing for the London Philharmonic and you've recently moved to Plymouth. Like, you're all welcome to apply. And we want to create a bit of a mixture of people. So we do have some regular members that do come back. If we've got the space, then we try to include as many people as we possibly can, given the restrictions of the practice room and all that kind of stuff. This time, because of the funding, we had to limit that to 12 people. And so we got people to apply and to state their reasons for wanting to be in the project and give us an idea of their background and their skills and all that kind of stuff. And then we tried to pick within that a really good mix of people that have got experience, people that have never had this experience and really want it, and then people that we know just really value being in the orchestra and what it gives them and the opportunities and the community and the joy of spending months rehearsing a thing and getting tight with the group and then going out and performing. So yeah, it generally, we try to keep it as kind of democratic as we possibly can, rather than us picking, oh, we really want you. We try to see who wants to be involved and then pick from that. I always personally feel a great pressure to be this kind of central point of knowledge and experience and leadership and all that kind of stuff. And I'm quite often pleasantly surprised at how I don't really need to do that. How the fact that people have signed up for this kind of thing, they do come into it with an attitude of wanting to take sort of ownership of their responsibility right from the get-go. So we kind of quite quickly gel as a unit that's working off each other rather than looking to a central point of leadership, if that makes sense. So yeah, people join the orchestra and quite quickly it just starts to sort of manage itself, which is perfect. People spot holes in my knowledge, spot holes in other people's knowledge, and they try to fill those little gaps and try to help each other along, which is why we like to have a mixture of experienced and less experienced, so that the experienced people can help the less experienced ones, but also that the experienced people can learn a bit from inexperienced people and how they're approaching things. I think we end up with something that's much more holistic and working as a as a machine in itself, rather than potentially an orchestra where everybody's reading from the page and looking for the conductor for their cues and playing their role very, very well, but maybe doesn't interact with other roles that much. They leave that to the conductor, the third eye, to manage all those things, whereas we try to manage much more in-house, person to person, little group to little group. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And who should go along to their performance of Battleship Potemkin? Is it film buffs? Is it music lovers? Or is it those who are up for something a little bit different?
All three. All three, and anybody else. We're not out there to play music to just people that like music, or to play music to a film to just people that like film. You know, we want it to be an exciting event to be at, whether you know much about orchestral music or whether you've seen orchestral music before. And what we end up performing isn't really orchestral music. It's kind of born of that idea of orchestral music, but I mean, they'll see if they come to the performance how wildly away from orchestral music it gets at times. And people that love film, especially silent film, if they know Battleship Potemkin for the original score or any of the many other scores that have been written for it, in the centenary year, the BFI are releasing it with the Pet Shop Boys score. So we're up against the Pet Shop Boys this year. They'll get a whole new experience because they'll get a new reading of the film based on the music that we've decided to put to it. And then for people that like going to the theatre, I can imagine this would feel somewhat like a theatrical performance, because there are real people in front of you to watch that you don't get when you go to watch a film, but you also get the narrative of a story being told visually. So for the musicians, it's like watching a band and a play at the same time. You know, it's a really encompassing thing. So we want anybody and everybody to feel like they would like to come and experience it, but spaces are limited, tickets are limited. Yeah, that's what we want.
All this leads to one of our usual questions. What is the role of the artist in society? Tom mentions Plymouth Arts University.
On the front of the building, they've got a huge quote which said, "We need creatives now more than ever." And I was looking at that the other day and just thinking, well, I wonder what that really means. We need creatives now more than ever. What do I think that means? And asked a few people that I work with in the library what they think it means, and got some interesting answers. The artist in society, I think, it's so multifaceted, but really for me, what I want from art in society is some escapism. I want to be taken somewhere that I can't access in my normal day-to-day life. I can't access a military ship in 1905 in the waters off Russia. I can't access that. And I can't access a kind of musical accompaniment to that in real life necessarily. So I want to help sort of create that. Yeah, for me, I think what I want from art in society is some escapism. I want some other ways of communicating ideas. I've tried to be in bands before and be a lyricist and stuff. That never works. But music is a way of communicating my ideas to other people. It's a way of creating a community that wouldn't have come about had it not been for the art that we're creating together. I'm not a sage on these things, so I think that's probably my take.
Art can entertain, unite, and in the process raise issues. Collaboration feels like it's key to the Pit Orchestra, and on the night of the performance there is a collaboration that has a deep, deep resonance.
One of the really important things for us about this particular performance is that we've got the Ukrainian Society singers coming in for the performance. We approached them to see if they wanted to be in our performance with the film, but they didn't want to do that. I don't want to put words into their mouth as to why they didn't, but it's a Russian film, so all is forgiven for not wanting to be involved in that. But they're going to come and open up for us and sing some traditional Ukrainian songs and some modern Ukrainian songs. And so in this time, our awareness of the difficulties surrounding Russia and art that is connected to that yeah, it's really important for us, and we're really happy that they are going to come down and perform with us.
The Pit Orchestra perform live to the Battleship Potemkin for one night only on the 6th of December at Plymouth University's The House. Tickets are available now on thepitorchestra.com, where you will also see a timeline of their work and a manifesto of their intent. This has been Portrait from the PRSD.